Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Hey, Faith Positive Nation! Dr. Joey Fawcett here with you again today for another amazing episode of Faith Positive Radio, the place where you literally hear stories about how you can increase your faith with greater joy at work so that you love God and others more. And let's face it, some of the places we work, it's kind of hard to love others more, right? God might love them, but you're finding it challenging too. Well, what if you could be a part of creating a culture in which the company you work for is as successful as, say, a Mark Cuban enterprise, right? Okay, a friendly Mark Cuban enterprise.
Friendly.
Yeah, but does good like Mother Teresa. Would that be the kind of place you'd want to work? Hey, I'm holding my hand up. If you're just listening to this, you're not watching our YouTube channel. If you're just listening to this, both my hands are up. Okay. I want to work for a Mother Teresa and friendly Mark Cuban company. Don't you? Right. Well, exactly how do you go about finding that kind of culture, or how do you go about creating that kind of culture? Boom. Lean in, because the guest is going to tell you how to do that. His website is 52.com, spell out 5, spell out 2, TWO. And that's 52.com. Bill Woolsey is his name. Faith Positive Nation, help me welcome Bill to Faith Positive Radio. Bill, welcome, man. I am so excited.
Thank you so much, Joey. Thanks for inviting me on your show here this afternoon. It's great to be here and great to be with your audience.
Yeah, well, and it's always great to talk to somebody from the great Republic of Texas.
The
right?
Republic of Texas. Thank you so much. You obviously are aware of geography. You got that right. And yes, wow. I hope your listeners appreciate that. And that, like 2/3 automatically turn it off and go out of here, So that was awesomeness.
No, but Texas is so large. I mean, the tune out factor is going to be exceeded by the tune in factor, because
there we go.
The Texans are going to be talking to each other. Hey, this guy understands. Every time back when we used to fly everywhere, right? I guess the planes are starting to fly again. Yeah. Every time I go into Texas and I stand in front of a group, no matter it's 25 or 2,500, I'm always like, hey, it's great to be back in the great Republic of Texas.
Yes.
And people stood and cheered, because you guys in Texas are a country unto yourself, aren't you?
Whenever I speak outside of the state, one of the first things I'll do is say, raise your hand if you've ever been to Texas, and and God bless you, and
God bless
in
Texas.
Texas is where God has his ranch, and it's in West Texas. So that's
not East, but West Texas.
It's West Texas. So anyway.
Well, I think it takes a great sense of humor to talk about your home state like that. So I live in Virginia. So what do we know for it? Well, there is that little thing about where we've had more presidents born here than any other state, but I'm not sure whether that's a good or bad thing anymore. So Bill Woolsey, there's this company where Mother Teresa matches up with a friendly Mark Cuban. And so the company is successful, and yet it's doing good. Now it goes by a variety of names. We hear on less Jesus following shows, we hear such companies called social capitalism, or companies that do social good. We Jesus followers like to put different phrases on it, things like that. What do you call a company that's got the heart of Mother Teresa and the success of a friendly Mark Cuban?
Well, Joey, we would call that a variety of things as well. And it's really depending upon what you, the person who's leading it, kind of what you feel comfortable doing. So if you're doing mission work, you might call it business's mission. You might call it marketplace ministry. You might call it a kingdom business. Right. But then if you're in a nonprofit setting, we would simply call you maybe a faith-based nonprofit, or if you're a church plant, because we work with church plants as well. Okay. And especially in our church plants, we work with them if they're like in an urban setting. we want them to understand that in today's kind of post-Christian, pre-Christian reality of the U.S., that this whole combo of Mother Teresa meets a friendly Mark Cuban, where everything is sacred and you're bringing Jesus to the party, but you're doing it in financially sustainable ways, that's in your best interest for longevity in that setting. So,
I mean, you covered a lot of different types of work there, if I can refer to that. Are you talking about church plants? You're talking about faith-based NFPs. And then you're also talking about like an S Corp, maybe even a C Corp or an LLC or something
LLC,
like that.
Right.
Yeah. So where's the heart and soul in this Venn diagram of these different types of corporate structures for you? What are the essentials?
The heart and soul of that, Joey, really flows from the heart of the person. One of the beautiful things that we've had the opportunity to do is to help create and scale a variety of starts, and it all flows out of the passion of that individual. A lot of the people we've worked with, they actually they wouldn't self-identify as entrepreneurial even. They would simply say, I have a passion to help or serve this group of people. I kind of have an idea. I'm not really sure what to do with that idea. And what's come out of all of that, some for profit, some nonprofit, what's come out of all of that is this mixing of understanding all of life is sacred. Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and the values that he's put into me are going to become the values of the organization. And so that's why we want you to understand that as that happens, where is Jesus in that mix, as opposed to you left him home, locked in the closet, right? When you go out on.
But it's a prayer closet I left him locked in,
It's
Bill,
a
right?
prayer closet with a shawl. Yes, he has a little shawl on his shoulder.
That's right. The magic mayonnaise over in the corner,
he is,
right?
He's kneeling. He's kneeling on something. But wow. Sorry, Lord, for all of that. Okay, but back on track. So it's been really a wonderful thing. So I guess when you said the Venn diagram, it's this understanding all of life is sacred, that Jesus is for me. He wants to be present in whatever I create. But then also this concern, and we use a phrase, money's not the mission, but where there's no money, there's no mission. So this concern that financially, we want it to last, we want it to be sustainable, and therefore what are the best business principles we can bring to bear, and how that's going to impact it as well. So that's where I would put that Venn in the center of faith and finances, you might say.
Yeah, that's awesome, because any person that starts a business, their values are going to shape and form that business regardless,
regardless.
From however they define the mission or what have you. But it sounds like what you're doing is you're really midwifing Jesus followers to get Jesus up front.
Yeah, and obviously, so if you're going into this and you want it to be sustainable, and you're in a culture setting that is anti-Christian, so I mean, the small town I live near, you could put Jesus on the billboard and it wouldn't affect a lot of people. It's a pretty still a pretty Christian. But I go 1 hour into Austin, and it's the exact opposite, right? And so there's an awareness of how does Jesus, what role does he play? And in particular, what are the values that he demonstrates repeatedly in miracles in the scriptures? What are those values that I want to put into what I'm doing? It's one of the reasons we say in our marketing that we train women and men to build, fund, and launch ventures that help people. So because that common ground of we want to help people is the leading edge, you might say. And then as Christians, we don't want to just help you do a coffee shop. We want more people to know Jesus through your coffee shop.
Through the coffee shop. Okay.
So what's the platter you're serving Jesus on would be the question.
Yeah. So how do you introduce people to Jesus? And
what does that look like?
Yeah. What does that look like? And for me, just as importantly, how can you, through your business, introduce people to Jesus without ever calling him by name, until then they say, what about this? So you mentioned a coffee shop. What are some other types of business enterprises that you've seen launched?
Yeah, mobile medical clinics, sex trafficking homes, and apartments for women or to get them out of sex trafficking in Detroit, mobile food banks, homeless shelters, Hmong language school, support groups. Some of them are small because they're really based upon the desire of the individual. Some of them are multi-million. So, it could be a support group for single Puerto Rican moms in the Bronx, led by 3 women who were all single Puerto Rican moms, So
Who better, right?
Right. That's exactly right. So it really spans the spectrum of what it is you want to do. We're working with a nonprofit right now. One of them, they're doing a high school, Christian high school. Okay. Wow. So they're outside of Austin. Then there's Weekday Ministries, which is almost like a mini network across a few communities, and they have a number of they have a 501c3, but then they have a number of arms that are into the business community and the school community, and marrying those two up. So they're helping businesses be better at social good, but then they're also helping the communities address the needs through the business owners. So it's a pretty neat mix what she has going on there.
You said something earlier is really interesting, that money is not the mission, but without money, there is no mission, right? That really can set you thinking, because you do want to create a sustainable business if you're in business to do good, and you believe that the Father's using your business, right, to reach people for Christ. And yet we, many times we Jesus followers have sort of mixed sentiments or mixed understanding about money, and so we could tend to think of money as something that's not sacred. I mean, the metaphor of Mother Teresa, for instance, where she served and what she was doing. So talk about that fine line. And we've had dozens of financial advisors, and I mean, Ron Blue's even been on here talking about money and what was that? Second only to the kingdom of heaven in terms of topics that Jesus talked about.
Topics, right.
Right. So talk to us about how you as a business owner might overcome any self-limiting beliefs that you might have around money and the making of money, so that it can be used to sustain your business, through which you're introducing people to Jesus.
Well, and you probably, the phrase you used were self-limiting the beliefs that you have about money, right? So it's really, as you move into this, one of our criteria is to ask you why, why are you doing what you're doing? And we're trying to tap into your passion. So if we work with you and your ultimate goal is to make more money, then we would want you to flip that and say, is it to serve people or is it to make more money? Okay. Is it to serve God? So what's your leading value that's taking you there? And when it seems to us, this is probably more anecdotal than not, if the person is coming out of a professional church work environment, they tend to have some more issues with what's the right place for money. If they're coming out of a secular, let's just call it that for lack of better, or a business kind of environment where they understand the power of money, right? So Jesus obviously understood the power of money and its power to grab you and to take your heart places it shouldn't go, but also the place that, when it's not the love of money that you're using, but rather it's the love for good and how to use money, then it's a whole different thing. So when we talk with you, for instance, if you're a nonprofit, most of the people we encounter with nonprofits, they only think of the donative income stream. They're just thinking, how can I get more donors and, bigger donors and broader
bigger
donors.
Donor list.
Right. Bigger donor list. Can I buy that list somewhere? Kind of thing. And,
that's when they're after Mark Cuban, right?
Yes.
Friendly or not.
So we have in our training, we have a whole module on fundraising and how to ask well and how to pitch for funding and recruiting. But then on the other side of it is to understand that in a consumer culture where people are expecting to pay and frankly associate value with paying, then how do we in a godly way, because we also know, for instance, in our training, we don't give our training away, at least, all of it. We have donors. Our model, for instance, is a 50-50 donor earned income. So our donors help us provide what we do at a greatly reduced price, so that when people, quote unquote, purchase it, it's cost something. And they have actually transferred some value into that, and we've made this transformation. And so then it's taken differently. So when we work with nonprofits, especially if you're in the urban core, we want you to think about, is it a fee for service? Is it a rental stream? What kind of earned income are you going to have that will help mitigate some of the ups and downs of donor development, but B, in those inner settings, it's often very hard to have donors living there. You're usually funding from outside coming in, and it just makes for a wonky relationship. So I think, that would be my thing. If you're looking at this and let's say you're a Christian businessman or a businesswoman, and how do I, balance out this? I'm supposed to, I have to make money so my business, my employees, everybody does well. How much is enough? With that, we would simply come back and say, it's all God's. He's blessed you, given you favor. How are you using that for good? And that would be my driving swing thought with that.
How are you using it for good? Wonderful. Bill Woolsey is my guest today, Faith Positive Nation. If you or where you can go to the internet while you're listening to this. 52.com is the website. That's spelling out 5 and 2, 52.com. Bill, where did that name 52 come from?
Joey, it comes from the feeding of the 5,000, 5 loaves and 2 fish. And especially in Mark chapter 6, in that miracle, Jesus only speaks twice, and both times that he speaks, they're commands. The disciples come to him and say, you need to send the people away. They're hungry. And he commands them, you give them something to eat.
Yeah, you feed them.
You feed them. And then they say it's going to take half a year's wages. He commands them to go and see how many loaves and fish you have in the crowd. They go back in and appropriate, steal, borrow, whatever.
Strong armor kid giving up his 2 fish sandwiches.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you kind of want to go, okay, guys, surely you could have found more food. I mean, we're talking a lot. You didn't try very hard, but we'll give you that one. Yeah. So when we started 5-2, there were a group of us in a room, and we were looking in the scriptures to kind of see, okay, we started actually originally just to help church planters. And one of the things we heard from planters, same thing we hear today, men and women we work with, where's the money going to come from? Where are the people going to come from? And that whole thing of resources. And so we took that name to remind us that Jesus is working ahead of us. He's got people in the community. He's got resource in the community. Time and time again, we see that what is missing is not your idea. Somebody else has had the idea before you. What's missing is the leadership to execute the idea. And that's when people flock around it, when somebody will stand up and say, I'll lead this thing, who wants to help? And we just see it happen all the time.
Give us an example. Tell us a story, Bill, about somebody raising their hand and leading out in something like that.
Gosh, the story I love to tell the most, just because she's such a wonderful lady, is Deb Ellenger, former police officer in Detroit. She worked in the sex crimes division, just literally kind of burned out. And as she came out of that, she was active in her church. Her pastor heard of us and said, you ought to talk to these people, because she wanted to do something about the situation instead of just prosecute those who, were causing the situation. So she came to us and said, I've got this idea called, I want to start these homes and things to get women off the streets in the 9th precinct. But I don't know where to begin. And I just know nobody's going to like the idea. Nobody's going to fund the idea. And we're like, Debbie, it's such an inspiring idea. Plus, you've been there. You've worked with these women. You know this thing.
She got a story to tell herself, doesn't she?
So she tells stories. And God he's given her 3 houses, some apartments. She recently, the really cool story is the Troy school district. Every year they do a fundraiser where they choose one charity and they say, we want to raise money for this charity, this nonprofit. She had applied for 3 years. They had said no the first 2 years. And then finally last year, 2020, they chose Ellie's House. And they raised the most they've ever raised for a nonprofit. And they gave her $180,000. So it's just cool stories like that through perseverance, people saying, this is what I need, and a guy coming, writing a check for a refrigerated truck. It's just wonderful to see God respond to faithful people taking the initiative and wanting to launch a venture that does good.
Man, raising $180,000 in 2020. That's like raising
wasn't that cool?
$360,000 in any other year, right?
Yeah, right. And from a public school district for a Christian organization. That's a whole nother slice of
mic drop, boom, right there, right? It's amazing how captivating good is on our imaginations, right? Okay, so somebody listening to this right now, they're walking the dog or they're jogging or something, or the Peloton or whatever, and they're hearing you, Bill Woolsey from 52.com, and they're saying, man, I can't raise my hand. I can't raise my hand and give leadership to this. You said something earlier about it's that identification of passion. That would seem to me to be integral to that raising your hand and giving leadership process. How do I go about identifying my passion, Bill?
We have a nice little process we use in our training, and it's built around emotions, events, and experiences. And it's built around self-identifying, because that's the issue. Some of us in corporate world have been through a values discovery, or, what's your personal mission and all that kind of stuff. But we encounter a sheer majority that have never done anything like that. And they haven't taken the time to say, why do I do what I do? What are my passions? And so we take you through this exercise that if you just think about what are the events in your life that are the most memorable, what do you remember about them? What did you love about them? What did you hate about them? What are the experiences in your life, like divorce or death or of a child or loss of a job or something like that, or, whatever. What was the experience that you had? Same thing. What do you remember about it? What do you like about it? And then the emotions. And on the emotions, that's where I can quickly help people discover what their values are. And I just ask them, so when you get mad at somebody, what did they do that caused you to get mad? Well, they broke a value is what they did. And so it's through that you can start to determine what those values are, and then we help you link those to people. Is there a particular group of people that you have a heart for, that if you could just have all the resources to serve them, time, money, whatever, you'd invest your life there? And so yes, the leadership, it's funny you say that. We don't, in any of our marketing, we don't use the word leader and we don't use the word entrepreneur because people, they think that's like, oh, I'm not a leader. Or they think, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. Okay. But there's a good chance that you have started some things. Perhaps there's a good chance that people look to you, or if you were to step up and say something, they might look to you. So, and that's where we develop you, and we can tell through our process, we can somewhat prophesy, I guess you'd say, to what degree your start, your business or whatever, it will scale up. So it's, anyway, that's how we would take you with the values. That's how we would take you to discover that passion through a series of questions to really help you articulate into words what's your feeling. And usually that bridge has not been built yet.
Yeah, and building that bridge between your passion and the people whom God's calling you to serve. Yeah. So, Bill Woolsey, how did you get into this line of work? How did God call you into it?
Well, Joey, kind of like you, I've been a pastor for quite a while. So I was started in ministry and as a pastor in 87, and I was always the evangelism guy. I was evangelism in youth, and I was evangelism and adult ed and executive pastor. And then in 97, my family and I were called to start a church in West Houston. There were 7 families who wanted to do this. We were one of the 7. And by the grace of God, I'd been in large churches, so had learned, how to scale and how to build staff. And we, God blessed that congregation, and we grew from 7 families to 1,600 families, 3 locations, just a crazy wild ride. So that's kind of how I got into it. We started 5.2 in 2009 as a way to support church planters, and then realized in 2012 that the secret sauce that was missing, the secret ingredient, would be just any woman or man who had this passion or this desire to start something. If we could leverage them, we could see some significant change in the church in the U.S.
Gotcha. So what started as a church planning ministry really began to expand.
Right.
Yeah. What was the transformation point, that defining moment that began to expand that, Bill?
Probably a pain point of realizing there, at least in the denomination I was in at that time, there were that number was small of church planters. And then outside of that, there were a number of church planting orgs. But then because of the way we had led ministries and the way I was blessed to always be a part of growing ministries. Every ministry was a part of, we grew it significantly. And kind of looking back and saying, well, how did God bring that about? And I was going to be an engineer early on. And so this whole thing of applying God's wisdom and sciences to anything you do. So we kind of looked at that, stumbled across the business model canvas process, realized that this was an entrepreneurial tool that works for anything. How could we marry that up? So it was really a discovery of some of that, that it just made the sense to really who I was, who our leadership group was, and we were off to the races, you might say.
Wow. So God really expanded the vision beyond church planting and began planting the church at work.
That's exactly right. In church, what we're seeing right now, when we used to want to reach people for Jesus, we'd start another church and people would come, right? And that model is not effective. So now we help you start ventures that do good, that bring Jesus and introduce people to Jesus out where they are, as opposed to making them come to where you are as a church or as a congregation. And that's really our strategy. Our core strategy is to mobilize men and women, whether they're already in these entities and help them grow in their faith, or if they're trying to start something, they've worked for the man for a while and now they want to do their own thing, then we can help them be successful and use what they've learned. But now let's transfer that and take their faith and apply that in a startup situation.
Okay. So if I'm a part of Faith Positive Nation and I'm listening to this, and I'm not a church planner, I'm not a minister. I'm not even the son of a minister, right?
There you
or
go.
a daughter
Good.
or
That's
a minister.
Even better. That's perfect. That's all perfect. You're exactly who we want.
Okay.
all those negative, all those caveats of no.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to give my life to something meaningful, right? Where I can do something good. And I want to learn from you because you understand the process for scaling it up. How's the best way for me to get in touch with you, Bill?
Joey, the couple of ways: you can go to 52.com and come in through our contact sheet there. That's kind of our portal site. You're also going to see there our training, and you can click on that and you would be taken to startnewtraining.com. Okay. You can also go to startnewtraining.com separately. You can send me an email at bwoolsey, that's B as in boy, Woolsey, WOOLSEY at 52.com. That'll be in the program notes. You can send it to info@52.com and we can connect you. When you go to startnewtraining.com, you're going to see all of our process that was, we used to deliver it in boot camps, face-to-face in a 2-year framework where we walk with you, coach you, everything else. We've now taken all that and transferred it into an online platform. So you get the whole 9 yards there, and you'll find it in a variety of levels. If you're self-paced and you just want to drive your own boat, you can get it all the videos and handouts for you and your team. Or if you want to get into a cohort and you would like us to hold you accountable and drive you, then you can do that as well. And we also have then some private ways you can experience it, depending upon what your needs are.
Awesome. So both of those websites, 52.com and startnewtraining.com, are on Bill's page on our website at getpositive.today. So you can just search for Bill Woolsey and at getpositive.today, and all that'll come up. Bill, you've also written a book. We've got a link to that on your page on our website. What's the name of the book?
7 Steps to Start. Just the brief 7 steps that we've used and we see around our experience of what you should be thinking about as you want to start something. It kind of walks you through some of that as well.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. And so we've got a link to that over on Amazon for you on Bill's page on our website. Bill Woolsey, Faith Positive Nation always wants to know from my guest about a favorite Bible verse or Bible passage. You were dancing through the book of Mark there a moment ago, buddy, the 6th chapter. Is that it, or you got something else?
No, that would not be it. It would probably be
okay.
2 others. It would be 1 Peter 3, always be prepared to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do so with gentleness and respect. And then the other one would be out of 1 Corinthians 9, I become all things to all people that I might save some. So you're not gonna save them all, but you should certainly be trying to, and may God give you the grace to do that.
Oh, beautiful. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Bill Woolsey from 52.com, startnewtraining.com. You don't have to be a minister. In fact, Bill hopes you're not a minister when you reach out to him and you want to realize your passion, put it in some sort of social good. Remember, this is about Mother Teresa meeting a friendly Mark Cuban. And so you want to go do your own thing and you want to live into the large vision to which God's called you. Bill Woolsey's the man for you to call. Go to 52.com, startnewtraining.com, pick up his book. All of that is on his page on our website at getpositive.today. Bill, thanks so much, man. Pray God's blessings on you, your amazing family, as well as the ministry to which God's called you, and you're so faithful. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.